English, a language that today dominates the internet, science, and commerce. It holds official status in 57 countries and is spoken by nearly 1 billion people. But if you were to hop into a time machine and go back 1,000 years, you wouldn't understand a single word. For a modern speaker, Old English is a foreign language. Some linguists, due to its wild evolution and simplification, even classify it among grammatically stripped-down pidgin languages. How did this happen? How did the ritual runic inscriptions of Germanic tribes become this global chameleon? Today, we will trace the journey from the blood and mud of the Jutland marshes to Shakespeare and American slang. The arrival of the Germanic tribes. Our journey begins in the 5th century. In the year 410, Roman legions left Britain, leaving the island defenseless against raids by the Scots and Picts. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the king at the time, Vortigern, hired Germanic mercenaries led by the brothers Hengist and Horsa. The inhabitants of Britain did not want to fight and thought the Germanic people would handle it for them. It was a fatal mistake. When the Germanic mercenaries recognized the weakness of the local inhabitants and the wealth of the land, they invited more of their kinsmen, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, and began to fight the Britons for the island. The Jutes came from the Jutland Peninsula. The Angles also lived on the Jutland Peninsula, specifically in the region of Angeln. The Saxons resided in what is now northwestern Germany, and had been renowned maritime raiders for several centuries. These Germanic tribes from the North Sea coast were collectively referred to by the Roman historian Tacitus as Ingveones and spoke very closely related dialects. The struggle for Britain was long. At certain times, the domestic Britons successfully resisted the Germanic invasion. From the end of the 5th century, we know the names of commanders Ambrosius Aurelianus and Arthur, though we know nothing specific about them, and some historians consider them to be the same person. Consequently, the Germanic invaders had to repeatedly request reinforcements from the mainland, a persistent flow that reportedly lasted until the mid-6th century. This migration transformed Britain not only culturally, but also genetically. To this day, we see the representation of Germanic male lineages in England rising from Wales toward the east. From the Saxons came the inhabitants of Essex, Wessex, and Sussex. From the Angles came the populations of East Anglia, Middle Anglia, Mercia, and Northumbria. From the Jutes came the population of Kent, the Isle of Wight, and the opposite shore of Wessex. The Byzantine historian Procopius of Caesarea also mentions Frisians in Britain. These people called themselves Anglican, the kin of the Angles. It is speculated that the name of the Angles prevailed over the name of the Saxons primarily to avoid confusing the name of the country and nation with the mainland Saxons. Around the year 1000, the term England became established for England, eventually simplified to England. Language and grammar. English, along with Frisian, German, Dutch, and their various dialects, belongs to the West Germanic branch of languages. Germanic languages are distinguished from other Indo-European languages primarily by Grimm's law, a massive consonant shift. For example, Indo-European P became Phi and then Phi. Indo-European Ki developed into Ki and eventually He. This is why we have Latin pater but English father. Other specific characteristics include ablaut, vowel changes in the root during inflection. The change of syllabic L, R, M into ul or un. A strong stress on the first syllable, which led to the reduction of endings and a tendency toward analytical expression using prepositions. Of all West Germanic languages, English is closest to Frisian. They are sometimes grouped into the Anglo-Frisian subgroup. Originally, English was written in runes. This alphabet had up to 33 characters and was carved into bone, metal, or stone. Runic script was abandoned under the influence of the Church, which, from the 7th century, introduced the insular Latin script derived from an Irish mutation of the Roman alphabet. However, Some runic characters that express sounds Latin lacked penetrated the Old English Latin alphabet, such as the runic sign, thorn. English at that time was still generally pronounced as it was written, as can be demonstrated in a phonetic transcription of the Lord's Prayer from the late 10th century. Old English was inflected, had genders, four cases, and even a dual special forms for a pair of persons. For example, the word for stone, stan, had the genitive form stans and the dative stane and the plural form stanas. Today, of all the endings, only the plural ending s is left to us. There were four main dialect groups: two Anglian dialects, Northumbrian and Mercian, the West Saxon dialect, and Kentish, the Jutish dialect. Only the West Saxon dialect is known in detail due to the flourish of West Saxon literature from the late 9th century, giving it a dominant position. The Viking influence. In the 9th century, Britain faced a new blow, the Vikings. Although King Alfred the Great stopped them, their language remained on the island. The Danes settled the northeast in an area called the Danelaw, and there was also Norwegian settlement in the north. Something fascinating happened here. Old Norse and Old English were similar but had different endings. To understand each other at the market, people began to drop the endings. Linguists believe this was the start of the silent decay of complex grammar. From the Vikings, we adopted key words: sky, egg, window, or the verb to get. Even the pronouns they and are of Scandinavian origin. Without the Vikings, English would not be English. The Norman conquest and French influence. Alfred's successors gradually reconquered Viking territories, and the complete unification of England occurred in 954. However, Scandinavian political interference continued until 1066, when the Norman Duke William the Conqueror defeated the last Anglo-Saxon king, Harold Godwinson. For the next 200 years, English became the language of the poor and the peasants. The Norman elite spoke a North French dialect and usually only understood English passively. The turning point came in the 13th century when the Norman nobility lost their holdings in France. King John of England earned the nickname Lackland, and Norman nobles had to choose between England and France. Those who stayed began to identify more with England. English re-emerged as an official language alongside Latin and French. King Edward I, known from the movie Braveheart, was reportedly fully fluent in English. While French remained the language of Parliament for some time, the opening speech was first delivered in English in 1362. The reign of Henry V is considered a definitive turning point, as he used English in his letters, making it the dominant official and literary language. The so-called Chancery Standard is created, which spreads from the Westminster Royal Chancery to other English counties. The persistent effort of the Francophone nobility to speak English led to the replacement of many Germanic words with French ones. Thousands flooded the language, resulting in dual terminology. The peasant cared for the cow, Germanic word. The noble ate beef, from the French buff on his plate. French gave us words for government, military, art, education, and law. In connection with Wycliffe's translation of the Bible at the end of the 14th century, English is also enriched with hundreds of Latin words for which English did not have its own terms. The Great Vowel Shift in modern English. Between 1200 and 1500, the old grammatical system collapsed. Gender disappeared, and case endings were replaced by prepositions and fixed word order. The biggest bizarre event occurred in pronunciation, the Great Vowel Shift. Before this, house was pronounced like whose and time as team. During the 15th century, these sounds broke into diphthongs. The rapid development of English can be demonstrated by the four versions of the Lord's Prayer over the course of 5 centuries. The problem was that the printing press began fixing spelling rules at that time. The result: we write words according to 14th century pronunciation, but pronounce them completely differently. The codification of English spelling occurred around 1650, although even then we would find some differences in notation compared to modern English. A kind of historical pillar is Johnson's A Dictionary of the English Language from 1755, since which practically nothing fundamental has changed in English spelling. The spoken language split into many local dialects, to the point where people from different areas sometimes stopped understanding each other. While progressive grammatical changes spread from the north, southern dialects remained conservative longer. From the late 14th century, the dialect around London contributed most to forming literary English, replacing the dominant role of West Saxon. Modern English dialects in Britain are usually divided into Southern, Western, Eastern, Midland, Northern, and Scottish. The most important dialect boundary is considered to be that which separates the Scottish and Northern dialects from the remaining dialects, which corresponds to the southern border of the former Kingdom of Northumbria. North of this boundary, vowel shifting has not been as intense as in the south. Other specific cases worth mentioning are the dialect of London, the so-called Cockney, and Irish English, which was brought to Ireland from the west of England in the 17th century. American English has paradoxically retained some 18th century features that have disappeared in Britain, such as the participle gotten or the full pronunciation of the R in the word star. Currently, English continues to fragment. The language that began with a few tribes in Jutland is now a living organism. New forms are emerging in Africa and the Pacific, which are again simplifying. English may have lost its original Germanic complexity, but that's what has made it the most successful communication tool in human history. Next time you write an email, think of Hengist and Horsa. Without their courage, you might speak very differently today. Thanks for watching.